I'm Adam Erby, Curator of Fine and Decorative Arts, and it's my pleasure today to welcome you to the newly restored Lafayette Bed Chamber. This is a project that we've been working on for the past 3 years, and finally we're able to unveil it to you in sort of its final glory. This is a research project that we've been working on. Over the past 6 years, we have been restoring the various rooms on the second floor, beginning with the chintz room, followed up by the blue bed chamber. Then we did the yellow bed chamber, and finally we came to the Lafayette Bed Chamber, which is symbolically the most important bed chamber outside of the Washington bedroom. So you might ask, why do we call it the Lafayette Bed Chamber? Well, first, there's a large portrait of the Marquis de Lafayette hanging in the room. The reason for that is that after the American Revolution, the Marquis de Lafayette came here and visited the Washington family. And it was in 1784, and when he did, he stayed right here in this room. And the family, after that, referred to the room as the room the Marquis de Lafayette stayed in. Now, why would Lafayette have liked this room? First off, it's on the riverside of the mansion, so it has an incredible view. He would have enjoyed that. Second off, it's one of the largest spaces in the house. And so what the Washingtons did, Lafayette visits in 1784, and what the Washingtons did is after they received a different portrait of Lafayette and his family from the Lafayette family that they put in the front parlor, they moved their portrait of the Marquis de Lafayette up here to the second floor to commemorate his visit to Mount Vernon in 1784. And that portrait, this is a reproduction of the original owned by Washington and Lee University. That portrait remained in this room until Martha Washington's death in 1802. The portrait is really important because it's commissioned by George Washington in 1779 as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army of his adopted son, who was only then in his early 20s when he's come to serve the American cause. And so there you see the portrait, which is oversized for this room, doesn't quite fit, but that's the reason they moved it here to the second floor. Now we have lots of furnishings in this room that have been either redone or refreshed. The most important of which is the bed and bedstead that we see right here. The bed represents one that the Washingtons brought back from the presidency when they came back in 1797. It has a red and white stripe to it, which is one of the more common fabrics they had access to in the 18th century. An important fact about this room that we've just only recently rediscovered is that this room was also the room that Nellie Custis Lewis, Martha Washington's granddaughter, stayed in 1799, and this is the room in which she had her first child, Martha's first great-grandchild by Nellie Custis. And this is the room that she stayed in during that time from 1799 till 1802 when Martha Washington's here. So she brings back likely the bed that she used during the presidency, which is a little bit simpler than the other beds on this floor. And this is a little bit of evidence of continuing research and the work that we continually do. For a long time, the story had been that Nellie Custis stayed in the room across the way that we call today the chintz room. But we found an important document, a letter written in the 19th century, saying that no, it was in fact this room, the room over top of the little parlor. So this is a much simpler bed. It's a mahogany bedstead with secondary woods, various secondary woods. The cotton cloth, which would have been durable, cleanable, and fashionable at the time. And these stripes, you see them all throughout the 18th century with a narrow little bit of braid along the outside edge. This bed is not as fancy as some of the other beds you'll see throughout the house. Notice, for instance, there's no cornice on the top of the bed. That element at the top that's often carved. There's no cornice on this particular bedstead. And the fabric is a simple cotton woven with the stripe design in it, not like some of the printed textiles or the woven damasks that you see in some of the other spaces. So that would have been the most expensive piece in the room. We've already mentioned the Lafayette portrait. And then we have a dressing table that's like many of the dressing tables that the Washingtons purchased over the course of their lives. It's called a knee-hole bureau dressing table, and it's fairly small. You really couldn't get your knees under it, but it was intended to be used as a dressing table and sometimes for writing. Perhaps one of the most interesting parts of the space in the new introductions is the wallpaper that you see in the room. The wallpaper is something that we have found over and over again the Washingtons used on all the rooms that just had plasterwork. This is a neoclassical design in a sprig pattern. The pattern is a Motier, which is derived from Indian and Southeast Asian textiles. And you see this pattern repeated over and over in federal households up and down the East Coast. Unfortunately, we don't know the wallpaper the Washingtons had. That's been lost to us over time, but we do know that the Washingtons had pattern paper in these spaces, and this pattern made in the 1790s is a very likely likely type for this particular room. We also have 4 chairs around the room. On Washington's probate inventory, these were listed as the least expensive chairs in the spaces of the second floor. So these are common Virginia-made chairs that we've chosen to use in this space to represent some of Washington's earlier purchases that he used throughout his lifetime. And so they have their slip covers, which you see here. The slip covers were meant to protect the fabric underneath, but also is just a neat cover. They have leather beneath them. So that's, they have slip covers that match all of the rest of the textiles in the room. And then there are curtains that are ensuite as well. The curtains are the same fabric as on the slip covers, and in the bed, a real sign of wealth. So this particular room tells an evocative story. And it's always important to remember the enslaved individuals who lived and labored here at Mount Vernon. These rooms were used with people going and coming and coming and going, and at all times. And there were several enslaved individuals, Molly, Caroline Branham, and Charlotte, whose responsibility it was to take care of these spaces and the visitors who resided in these rooms. Everything from getting a fire started, bringing up the wood, to taking out the chamber pots, and then other signs of labor you see over here. This juglet and basin, they would bring up fresh water every day for the inhabitant of the room for them to take a light sponge bath. So all of the needs of the people who stayed in this room were taken care of by these enslaved chambermaids. This room tells a tremendous number of stories over the course of a very long period of time. In 1784, it's where Lafayette came and visited, but it remains important, and the Washingtons decided to commemorate that. But the Washingtons, it remained an important space to the Washingtons later on in their life, when it brought them joy in November of 1799, when it's likely that Nellie Custis Lewis had her first child here in this room. So it's an amazing culmination of all of the spaces in the the second floor core of the mansion to sort of our final one to finish up with the Lafayette Bed Chamber. We hope you come, we hope you enjoy it, and we look forward to hearing from you.